one of my favorite hacks for the Elliot Romper. First, we're going to start by constructing the main body of the romper. You're going to sew your front and back together, add your front and back neck binding, and then we're going to take a look at the hem. For this pair, I cut the capri length, and according to the tutorial, we can either choose a traditional hem where you fold up the edge and hem the bottom, or do a rolled hem where you roll a small cuff to the bottom and tack along the sides. For this pair though, I want to do something different. So I will be adding a knit fabric cuff to the bottom of my capri. Now let's talk about how we will get the measurement for our cuff. First, we will begin by taking a ruler and measuring across the bottom of the leg opening. This is just a little over 5 inches, about 5 1/8. We want our cuff to be just slightly smaller than the opening. Normally, cuffs are calculated between 85 and 90% of the opening. For this pair, I'm going to go with 90%. Okay, now let's take a look at our cuff and our cuff measurements and how we got there. First, let's talk about the cuff height. For this pair, I wanted a 2-inch finished cuff. Once you take your 2 inches, multiply it by 2 and then add in your seam allowance. That gave me 4.75 inches for the height. Now let's take a look at the width of our cuff. If you remember when we measured our leg opening, the measurement was 5.125 or 5 1/8 inch. When we multiply this by 2, that gives us 10.25 inches. And once we take 90% of that, that gives us 9.25 inches. Now that we have our cuff measured, you want to cut 2. Here's a cuff that I've already began to sew up using my favorite method for sewing cuffs and bands. This is what I call a single seam cuff. Normally when sewing your cuffs, you would sew your fabric into a loop with right sides together and then fold the fabric with wrong sides together to hide the wrong side of your fabric and your seam. With this method, you have one seam that joins both sides of your cuff so that it turns out nice and neat, and it reduces the bulk of your seam by half. Let's get started making your single seam cuff. First, you are going to lay your fabric in front of you with the right side up. The stretch of your fabric should be going left to right. Fold the cuff in half with right sides together widthwise, or left to right. Next, we are going to take one corner and fold it down to meet the second corner up and down, or lengthwise. Take your time to match up your edges neatly and evenly and pin in place. Now when we look at our cuff, we have 2 folded edges, one on the left side of the cuff and one along the top. Now you're going to sew along the right hand side through all 4 layers of fabric. When you turn your cuff right side out, you should have one single seam and your cuff should be open in the middle. Fold the cuff in half and using a pin, mark the opposite side from the seam. This is going to help us when we stretch our cuff in place. Now we will match the cuff up to our romper bottom. As you can see, the cuff is just slightly smaller than the leg opening. This will help pull the leg opening in and hold the cuff tight to the calf or ankle. So we are going to match our seam up with the inseam of the pants and match the raw edges of the cuff to the raw edges of the pants. Pin in place. Now we will pin the place that we marked to the opposite side of the leg opening. stretch evenly and pin in between. Once you have finished pinning, sew in the round. Now let's take a look at our finished romper. We've attached both of our cuffs, and they look great. As you can see, the seam of the cuff lines up perfectly with the inseam of the pants. Looking from the inside, we can see how our cuff is sewn and attached in the round. Now all that's left to do is add the arm binding to your romper and you're all done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. For others like it, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on the newest videos from Petite Stitchery & Co. Until next time.